Hi, welcome back. In previous tutorials, so far we have seen how we can obtain the session factory and then we fired a native query. Now in this tutorial, we are going to see how we can create an entity in Hibernate and how we can save an entity in Hibernate. Now when we have to create an entity, we can either create the entities using annotations or without using annotations. So first we will see without using annotations and then we will see how we can create entities using annotations. So for that we are going to create a new project and there we will create an entity employee and try to save the object of employee in the database table using Hibernate. So let's start with creating the new project and again I'm going to use the Maven project only. So we will select create a simple project, finish. Let the group ID be com.tutorials and artifact ID be Hibernate save entity. And then we will click on finish button. Now here we have our Maven project Hibernate save entity. Now here we have our project Hibernate save entity. Now we need to create first pom.xml, that is we need to give the dependencies here in pom.xml. We need to give the two dependencies for MySQL connector jar file and the Hibernate jar files that we need. So we are going to copy it from the previous project which we created for session factory. So we will simply copy these dependencies and put in our current pom.xml. Okay, so we have given dependency for MySQL connector jar file and Hibernate core jar files. So here we are done with the pom.xml and similarly we will use the same utility class which we had created in the previous example to obtain the session factory. So we will simply copy this as well and put in our current project in Java folder source main Java. So we have our utility class as well. Next we need is Hibernate configuration file which is under the resources folder. So we will copy that also in our project. Now here we will change some of the properties, that is we will add few more properties after creating the entity. So for creating the entity we will right click on src main Java new class and we are going to create the entity with the name employee. And let's change the name of the package over here. Let it be entities and finish. Now here in this employee class we will give certain variables, that is the certain data members, and then we will add the getter and setters for those data members. So here we will give private ID, then private, sorry, data type has to be specified. So now in class employee we will give the data members. So we will give private int ID. Similarly we will give private string name and then we will give private double. Oh नहीं इसमें वो यूज करने हैं ना. Okay. So now in class employee we will give the data members. We will give private and we will make use of wrapper classes here, integer ID. Similarly, we will give private string name, and then similarly we will give private double and let it be salary. Okay, now we need to generate the getters and setters for this employee entity. So we will right click from source, we will select generate getters and setters. We want for all, and then we will click on OK button. So here we have created the class employee. Now if we are not making annotations, that is if we are not creating the entity using the annotations, then in that case we need to write one more XML file, and that is the hbm.xml file. So again we need to create that in the resources folder. So we will right click here, we will give new other, and we will select XML file, and the name of it we are giving is employee.hbm.xml file. Now here in this file we need to give the mapping details, that is what would be the name of the table which should be created for employee entity, what should be the name of the columns in the table. All those details will be given in this employee.hbm.xml file. Here we need to give first doc type, so we will copy that doc type from this file cfg.xml file which we already have, and we will put in our this file. Now here rather than hibernate configuration, we will give hibernate mapping, and then we will give the hibernate mapping. So we will give hibernate mapping tag, and within this hibernate mapping tag we will give the other tags. Now the first tag that we are going to give is the class tag. So here for class we need to give the name attribute first, which will give the fully qualified name of our employee class. So we will just copy this, and here we will give employee. And the second thing that we can give is the table to which this entity is to be mapped, that is to which this class is to be mapped. So here we want the table to be created with the name emp details. And then we can give the mapping for different columns. So we want to give ID tag first. Now we are using this ID tag to specify the primary key of our table. So we are using the column, we are using the data member ID to be mapped as primary key in our EMP details table. And along with this we can give one more optional attribute, which is the column, that is what would be the name of this field in the table EMP details. So here we are giving EID. So ID field of employee class will be mapped to the EID column in EMP details table. And then within this ID tag we can give generator tag also to specify that the ID we are assigning, that is the user or the programmer is going to assign the ID, it is not going to be auto generated. There are different values which can be used with class attribute that we will discuss later on. For now we are going to take it as assigned, since we are going to assign the ID while creating the instance of employee. This assigned should be given in double quotes. Later on we will see in subsequent tutorials that using Hibernate keys can be generated automatically as well, but for this example we are taking class as assigned, that is programmer is going to assign the primary key or programmer is going to generate the primary key. and then we will give the mapping for the rest of the columns as well. Now for giving the mapping of other columns, we need to make use of property tag, and within this we will give the first attribute name, and here we will give the data member of the employee class, so that is name. And then we can use the column attribute, which is optional, to specify the name of this data member as a field in table. So here we can give ename. So this name field will be mapped as ename column in the employee EMP details table. And similarly we can give the mapping for the third column as well, that is the third data member or the third field of our employee class. So for that again we will use property tag, and we can give the name, and that is salary. If we don't want to change the name of this field in the table, so we can leave it without giving the column attribute. So we have given here that class employee should be mapped to EMP details table, and ID field will be the primary key, and that would be assigned by the programmer. And then we have given the second column name would be mapped as ename, and salary would be mapped as salary only, because we haven't given the column attribute for this. So in this tutorial we have given the coding for employee.hbm.xml file, which is required to be given when we do not make use of the annotations for the entities. Now in next tutorial we will code our client class, and then we will save a employee entity. Thank you for watching this tutorial.